Historically, agencies are great at execution, consulting firms are great at strategy, but we all know clients need both at the same time, and they need them to be connected, not a handoff.
There's a race to incorporate, there's a race to get to the front of the line. We're not necessarily racing to the front because we don't want to be caught in a place where we can't pull back and we lose the thread of the human element that will always be essential in human communication.
There's more content, there are more channels, there's more data than ever, more expectations to be up to speed on the latest innovations. But more does not always mean better. And no matter what we're delivering, the expectation is that what we're delivering is accurate.
Hello and welcome to the MM+M Agency 100 podcast, brought to you today by Red Nucleus. I'm Bella Chakowski. I'm a reporter here at MM+M. And for today's conversation, we're talking about the convergence of medical communications, market access, and advisory. I'm excited to be joined by three folks from Red Nucleus: Jody McVan, who's the Global Head of Integrated Access Solutions; Aisha Lewis-Crowfoot, who's the Global Head of Medical Affairs, Medical Communications; and Colin Oliver, General Manager of Global Medical Affairs, all at Red Nucleus. So I'll just jump right in here, folks, by setting the table. And I understand that Red Nucleus had a long run on the Agency 100 list for MM+M, and you're back this year. So I'd love if you could just catch us up a little bit on what's driving the return to the list and how the organization has sort of evolved over time.
Yeah, so I can take that one, Bella. So Red Nucleus was founded as a learning and development organization. It's sort of the core to our team. It's the foundation of our company, steeped in sort of learning and development excellence, right? And a long history in sort of global organizations tied to learning and development. And the reason that we were on the Agency 100 list for all those years, over the last 5 to 6 years, we've grown quite exponentially by acquiring other capabilities and other sort of agencies to introduce new capabilities and new sort of functional expertise within the organization. So that's where sort of the medical communications and medical affairs expansion has happened. That's where our value and evidence and our integrated access solutions function has grown, and then advisory across all of the sort of divisional or functional domains of our organization. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to be is an organization that has the right capabilities and the right solutions for our clients, no matter where they are and where their needs are. We're not trying to be everything to everybody, right? That's for the size of our organization, and frankly, in our industry, that's nearly an impossible task. But really be able to bring the right capabilities and the right solutions at the right time to the right clients to be successful. And so why we're here today is really the sort of confluence and the integration of strategic advisory and sort of communications excellence into one organization focused on areas that align to our clients' functional areas.
Thank you for that, Colin. And you all introduced me to a new term, or I guess a hybrid of terms, which is Consultagency, but one word. What does that mean in practice, especially given what you're describing as your mix of capabilities?
Well, first, it's a fun word to say, and how I pronounce it is Consultagency.
Okay, Consultagency. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, mouthful. But, it's a meaningful term for us on many levels. Historically, agencies are great at execution, consulting firms are great at strategy, but we all know clients need both at the same time, and they need them to be connected, not a handoff. I think most agencies generally want to deliver strategy and execution together, and more you hear that as a differentiator, but that's not the biggest differentiating part of the consultagency for us. The challenge is that coming through on the promise is actually really hard to do structurally. The natural tendency is to have a strategy team that hands off to the delivery team. But, something gets lost in that transition. Even with the best of intentions, it still gets siloed. So, the client ends up re-explaining themselves and continuity gets lost, time gets burned. So what we've done is decided to remove the handoff entirely. Our consultants and our agency staff are one combined team. The same people who help a client think through the problem are the ones building the solution. So you're not reintroducing yourself at the different points in the partnership and along the engagement. Most agencies come, with a deliverable in mind, where we try to come in earlier than that, at the point where the client is still figuring out what they actually need. So in practice, I guess consultagency means we can adjust our strategy faster when something changes because the people that are executing, they're already in the room. And we get to execution quicker because there's no ramp up. They already know everything. So that's what the consultagency means for us. It's not a philosophy. It's a structural decision that we've made.
And the only thing I'll add is, and sort of reinforce what Jody said about this strategy to execution continuum, is oftentimes pure consultancies operate in a world where the strategy can be unimplementable, right? And the long-standing complaint of consulting organizations is that you set a strategy and it sits on the shelf that nobody uses. The model that we're putting forward here with the consultagency, and I will struggle to say it as well, it allows for the strategy to be steeped in executable understanding, right? And that makes it much more tangible and informative, and then, as Jody mentioned, sort of rapid in its translation to sort of tactics and execution.
And let's talk a little bit about medical communications. I understand that's been a core function and strength of Red Nucleus for quite some time now. How is that role evolving in today's environment?
Sure, I can take that question, and it's a big one. But from an industry perspective, medical communications is certainly evolving as there's so many service industries with the rapid onset of AI and broadening technologies. And we've seen medcoms shift from static, one-size-fits-all solutions to solutions that still maintain core tactics, which includes compliance capabilities and processes that meet best practices, for example, as you would expect to see in publications. But these solutions are now focusing in on the evolution of how to approach things from a digital first or AI driven and patient centric format. So just as an example of evolving practices, when we're thinking of the longstanding agency of record or AOR approach, we're also seeing that change from a focus on volume of tactics to value. So meaning we're seeing an increased focus on measurable impact, strategic partnerships, and the meaningful contributions that can provide a performance-based value approach. So instead of relying on, for example, a single AOR for most everything, putting most all of their eggs in one basket, so to speak, our procurement partners and medical affairs partners are focusing now on agile and specialized agencies that can truly deliver to the highest quality within specific therapeutic areas or across cross-functional domains. Just taking this a step further, the idea is that agencies really must actively provide something more than simply content development by rote. They must be able to provide meaningful strategic insights to medical and commercial planning. They must be able to manage analytics, understand and execute within digital platforms, provide an elevated creative experience, and so much more. And when you can do this with all of the aspects I've just mentioned, rooted in high scientific acumen and flawless tactical delivery, then you really do have a recipe for success. A few of the other areas we're also seeing increased change, as you might expect, include, again, generative AI, which is really about efficiency, but the remit for medical affairs and medcoms experts is to ensure that we're retaining, again, that content accuracy above all. So ways that we're seeing AI inform the process can include the rapid acceleration of our ability to synthesize or analyze research. So if you can imagine utilizing AI to support a faster literature search output as an example. And then, of course, there's also a good amount of research being conducted on how to compliantly leverage AI for content generation, whether we're talking about the written word or digital imagery. So the aim is simply put there to deliver a tailored multi-channel messaging that is accurate, that is compliant, and that is also innovative. From the patient-centric perspective, as an industry, we're increasingly prioritizing plain language summaries, visual aids, accessible digital formats such as video abstracts, podcasts such as ours that we're doing here today. And the aim is to continue to evolve how we're playing in those spaces and making sure that whatever we're doing, that we are actively easing the way for audiences to effectively digest a large amount of ever-changing information, as they're also, being exposed to and adjusting to rapidly changing technologies. So we want to ensure that our communications make impact in a space that's increasingly filled with noise.
You mentioned AI and responsibly using AI. I want to go back to that in a moment. But first, I'd love to talk about market access, which maybe isn't top of mind when people first think about agencies. But can you talk to me a little bit about why it's important?
And I'll note before I answer the question that not only is market access not always top of mind for when you think about agencies, but Red Nucleus is also not top of mind. It's an access agency. It's a newer offering for us over the last 4 years. And we are here to play, tying back to our gaming theme here for 2026. Market access it doesn't always get the attention it deserves. I think it's because people, still think of it as a downstream function, something that happens after the science is done and the commercial story is set. And what's changed is that it is no longer a downstream consideration. It's becoming much more central to the overall story. It influences how value is defined, how evidence is generated, how therapies are positioned, and rightfully so. So it's happening much earlier in the process, which is good. Yet we often see access, medical, and commercial working in parallel rather than working together, which means that the access story gets built in isolation. And then everyone wonders why healthcare decision makers aren't responding, the way they expected. And I say healthcare decision makers because market access goes beyond the payers. It includes formulary committees, IDNs, health systems, employers, HCPs for reimbursement and navigating restrictions, and patients for affordability and much more. What we bring is different in a couple of ways. First, our people have been doing this for a long time. We're talking client services, writers, designers, insights professional, all with, 20 plus years working specifically with healthcare decision makers. So, our experts know what lands and what doesn't land with that audience. Their experience is genuinely hard to replicate. Also, frankly, many of our clients have never had the opportunity to be a payer or sit in front of a payer, and we owe it to them to bring them the real world experts. A distinctive thing that Red Nucleus intentionally invests in is having full-time former payers embedded directly in our client teams, not as consultants that you bring in for, one meeting or, one workshop, but as ongoing members of the client team and the engagement. People who have actually sat on the other side of the table, made decisions, and understand how payers think. So when we're building market access strategy and the tactical plans with client, we're not guessing at what payers want. We have people in the room who used to be them. This all rounds out making market access an essential part of the overall strategy, not just something you bolt on at the end.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Just kind of piggybacking off of what you said there, Jody, and I think what also sets us apart in our approach as an agency, and I would encourage others to focus on this as well, cultivating this type of culture, is that we see a special and symbiotic connection between our divisional expertise, and there's not a sense of conflict, but rather a sense of deep collaboration, whereas you might expect our value and evidence team that Colin had mentioned there, including RWE and HEOR, learning and development, market access, and research and development talent. They can directly support our client partners in conjunction with our Med Affairs partners, where we know that our client partners are seeking support for cross-functional team members who might be requiring any depth of support that their internal teams just cannot meet. So the way that we interact as a group, I think, just sets us apart.
And we even go as far as to help our, smaller clients who might not have the infrastructure, might not be prepared to have national account directors that are calling on payers or field reimbursement managers that are helping the doctor's office with, restrictions and navigating PAs. We also have that as an offering within our value and evidence group that we can help outsource those roles for them. And it gives us an added level of experience and real world expertise because our national account directors can share with us the type of payer materials that really resonate and work and the messages that hit. And they can help us understand when the field reimbursement managers are out in the offices in the field, what type of tools that they need to be able to help get patients get access faster and not have a delay to treatment.
Absolutely. Let's shift gears back a little bit to talk about AI. Of course, the topic of the year, the topic of the past few years, but the advancements this year seem, even within the last 6 months, to be, happening at super speed. How are you guys thinking about AI and integrating it in a way that's both practical and meaningful for your clients?
We are taking an intentional and purposeful approach to AI for a couple of reasons. One, as with every sort of significant technological evolution or revolution of the past 150 years, there's a race to incorporate, there's a race to get to the front of the line. And inevitably there's some event or some moment in time that causes a little bit of a slowdown or a pause. There's a very real possibility this is going to happen with AI as well. And so we're not necessarily racing to the front because we don't want to be caught in a place where we can't pull back and we lose the thread of the human element that it will always be essential in human communication, right? But we also recognize that there's an opportunity to accelerate our efficiency, to accelerate into new areas and new ways of working and new exciting solutions that these tools can inevitably support. And so we are adopting with both within our own organization. We've hired recently a head of our innovation, a head of innovation coming out of McKinsey, frankly, who's got a really fantastic philosophy of try fast, fail fast. And apologies to Maria if I misquoted her own personal philosophy. But it allows us to really play and spend time in research and development. We have been for years, frankly, right? Mm-hmm. Ways of adopting AI, but we also sort of recognize and frankly, this is an ongoing and expanding area of communication in the industry, that the rapid adoption of AI across healthcare, and we're one of the most vulnerable industries to adoption of AI, right? Has the potential and the risk of sort of gray washing of information, right? That everything becomes sort of common and sort of conflated, and combine that with sort of the era of misinformation that we're living through right now. There's significant risk that misinformation and truth will be conflated in this process, right? So, ensuring that we adopt and adapt to the AI world, our clients, their customers are living in an AI world. So communicating in an AI world is critical to our success and to our longevity, but not losing the trust and the quality and the truth that has to be embedded in everything that we do, so that we don't get lost, and we don't get lost in the world of AI. So I've said a lot of words, and frankly, I'll go back to kind of our core philosophy is adopt and adapt where it makes sense, but we're not going to race to replace everything that we do and all the people that we have with AI, because that doesn't make sense for the success of a human to human, ultimately, communications business. I don't know, Aisha, Jody, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have a good balance of teams where we have people who've been around through really disruptive things that have happened over the last 30 years, but the death of the print world, which was huge for a lot of us, and then digital coming in and turning things on its head, and introducing a whole new way of communicating with apps and webinars, and the numerous different channels that you have out there. So being able to take our younger generation who grew up in the digital world, and also early adopters of AI, just even in their personal life as consumers, not just within the business they're at, and balancing that with those of us who have the experience of seeing how disruptive technologies can really impact what we do for our clients if we're not careful and mindful about it. I think that we have a good balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with everything Jody and Colin have said. And one of the things I will just add to that is it has been quite interesting and an absolute pleasure to watch the medical affairs industry continue to evolve over the years. As we know, those med affairs stakeholders and whatnot across the industry, just from my perspective, are making a larger impact within their organizations, and they're able to kind of flex to these new models. It's been kind of astonishing to see how people are able to absorb into the new technology and really collaborate together to bring innovation forward.
I do think it's going to be quite a ride, though. Pharma has historically been slow to adopt new technologies, and no one's going to have a choice on this one. It's here, happening. It's going to go fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's what I'm hearing sort of across the board from agencies as well. But it sounds like you guys have managed to strike a balance, and I'm sure we'll continue to strike a good balance. I have one last question for you, which is sort of about if we could, leave people with some takeaways right now, which, go any way you'd like with this. But what do you think the industry is missing when it comes to reaching the audiences that they need to reach right now? And what can be done about that?
Yeah, I think I can take that question, and I think it's a really good segue from where we left the discussion. So I think we're really, if I'm blunt, I think we're really underestimating how overwhelming the experience has become on the receiving end for our client partners and for our target audiences. So think of it this way, with the onset of AI and with rapidly evolving technology, there's more content, there are more channels, there's more data than ever, more expectations to be up to speed on the latest innovations. But more does not always mean better. And no matter what we're delivering, the expectation is that what we're delivering is accurate. And that goes back to, again, what Colin said there about being intentional and being very purposeful in what we do. So what's been on my mind as of late is just that sheer volume of what's coming out of the life sciences space and how that, of course, trickles down into everything we do, including from the medical affairs and medical communications lens. As we also know, there's a mandate to publish clinical trial data and to also do so within certain timeframes. So I think a good example of understanding the magnitude of the volume is that at the time of this podcast recording, our Red Nucleus team is about to head to Chicago for ASCO 2026, which, as you know, is a massive global gathering of leading oncology professionals. And this year's meeting, as they've noted, will cover 7,000 abstracts with 200 sessions and 450 oral presentations. And that's a lot when we consider the research, the data outputs and analysis, the efforts made to align on messaging, and then the nuts and bolts of actual content development and related compliance activities. So lots of wheels in motion to make this happen. And then when you're thinking of the oncology space as well, thinking of the sheer volume of the rapid advances in cutting edge research. So I think what it means is that the volume of information that medical affairs professionals, field teams, and ultimately physicians and patients are being asked to absorb is increasingly just a lot. And probably, or at least it feels like it could be more than we've ever asked of this group of folks as once. And so the natural reaction when you have all of these things coming at you quickly from all of these different angles is to be reactive and to develop and disseminate more stuff and do it just as fast as we possibly can. But again, from the MedCom's perspective, there is the need to plan with intention. You want to plan early, you want to plan well, you want to execute to plan. But to effectively reach those stakeholders, back to your question, you've got to also now keep up with the technological innovations and keep the pace of learning and adapting to constant and quick change while keeping your core best practices in place. So it truly is a balancing act. Ultimately, you're performing that balancing act while you're at max speed and also juggling a high volume. So that requires a good bit of adaptability and flexibility. So the aim is to stay proactive and not reactive, focusing on creating compelling narratives that reflect strategic imperatives and disseminate via core channels that provide the most impact to the stakeholders who need them. That is the key, and that is how we focus our time at Red Nucleus and how we advise our clients.
Great. This has been really, really helpful. I think I'll leave our audience with a lot of good insights. If I could ask one more question to stay on brand with this year's A100 theme, which is video games. Curious if any of you are gamers, and if so, if you have any favorite games.
I have two. I happen to really love Fortnite. Started out when I was looking to connect with my kids, and then they grew way out of it. And then by that point, I was absolutely addicted. I also play on my phone, which is a very hard platform to play on, and I end up in the final three quite often.
Wow.
So yeah, Fortnite is probably would be my game of choice, and then I have a bunch of other goofy ones on my phone. But
well, I'm not quite as serious as you. but I will never turn down a good game of Nintendo Mario Party. It's so fun. If you haven't tried it, I would encourage you to check it out. Great family game.
Definitely.
And I have an 8-year-old son who is very much into soccer. So FIFA is our game of choice. Every time, every chance we get.
Yeah, there you go. You guys all have touched the gaming world in some way or another. So there you go. Well, I appreciate it. Again, great conversation. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Bella.
Thanks, Bella. Take care.